Oh! Hey learners! Welcome back to our 5-part series on Bahasa Indonesia Loanwords, which explores Indonesian words which have been borrowed and adapted from other languages. In part 1, we looked to the ancient Sanskrit language for the earliest roots of Bahasa Indonesia. In part 2, we explored the language later left behind by the Portuguese, the earliest European traders in the archipelago. And in part 3, we covered language contributed by Arab and Persian traders in the years following the Portuguese. In this 4th segment of our series, we will examine the language which has left the most significant mark on the Bahasa Indonesia we speak today. That is, the Dutch language of the Netherlands. This should come as no surprise, as the Dutch were in Indonesia for almost 350 years. After 350 years in the country, the Dutch left behind over 3,000 words, which have been adapted into Bahasa Indonesia, making the Dutch contribution to the Indonesian language far greater than any other culture. In this segment, we will look at a few of the thousands of Indonesian words borrowed from the Dutch language. First, rokok and asbak. Rokok means cigarette and asbak means ashtray. The word rokok comes from the Dutch word roken, which means to smoke a tobacco product or other drug. And the word asbak comes from the Dutch word asbak with the same spelling and meaning. Second, kantor and kamar. Kantor means office and kamar means room. The word kantor comes from the Dutch word kantor, which has the same meaning. And the word kamar comes from the Dutch word kamer, with the same meaning. Third, months of the year. All Indonesian months of the year are derived from Dutch. Most of the months are spelled exactly the same. You can find in January, February, April, May, Juni, Juli, September, October, and November. Meanwhile, a little spelling adaptation can be found in Maret from Mart, Agustus from Augustus, and December from December. Fourth, koran and buku. Koran means newspaper and buku means book. The word koran comes from the Dutch word kranten, which has the same meaning. And the word buku comes from the Dutch word boeken, with the same meaning. Fifth, tas and koper. Tas means bag and koper means suitcase. The word tas comes from the Dutch word tas, with the same spelling and meaning. And the word koper comes from the Dutch word koffer, with the same meaning. Sixth, keras kepala. In Dutch, there is an expression for a stubborn person. Stijfkop. Stijfkop is the combination of the two Dutch words. Stijf, meaning stiff, plus kop, meaning head of an animal, used derogatorily for humans. While the Dutch words stijf or kop have never been adapted into Bahasa Indonesia, it is amusing that Indonesians do use the same expression to describe a stubborn person. In Bahasa Indonesia, we say, keras kepala. Keras means stiff, plus kepala meaning head. So, there you have just a small sampling of the thousands of words which have come into the Indonesian language by way of the Dutch. Did you know? The Dutch arrived in Indonesia way back in the year of 1602 and established the Dutch East Indies Company, also known as the VOC, to capitalize on the lucrative spice trade. Then, in 1800, the Dutch colonized a large portion of the archipelago and named it the Dutch East Indies, which, of course, is now called Indonesia. The Dutch East Indies remained a colony of the Netherlands for 142 years until the Japanese invaded during World War II. While the Japanese were able to dismantle much of the Dutch colonial state and economy, they were never able to wipe out the vast influence that the Dutch language had in Indonesia. We hope that gives you some insight into Dutch Indonesian history. Please be sure to check out our upcoming segment, Indonesian Loanwords from English. Do you find this video helpful? Give us a thumbs up and share this video to other fellow learners. Also, follow our social media accounts to stay informed about all LSI's updates. Until then, sampai jumpa!
I would say keras kalapa.
Kepala.
Oh yeah, kepala meaning stiff.
Did you know?
Gak kelihatan. Cuma setengah sampai hidung.
Into Dutch Indonesian history. Please, ngapain saya lihat bawah? Hey.